Tory Lanez was sent to prison for shooting someone. Now he's suing for $100 million because the prison couldn't stop someone from nearly killing him, stabbed 16 times by an inmate serving life for murder while corrections officers were nowhere in sight. The California Department of Corrections, the warden, and 50 prison guards are all named as defendants, and Lanez is breaking the damages down to $1 million per stab wound. To understand why this lawsuit exists, you have to go back to who Daystar Shemuel Shua Peterson actually is before all of this. Born on July 27, 1992 in Brampton, Ontario, Canada, the kid who would become Tory Lanez grew up in a family of Bajan and Curaçaoan descent. His father, Sonstar Peterson, worked as an ordained preacher and missionary, and the family bounced between Montreal and eventually Florida before tragedy hit. Tory's mother, Luella, died from a rare disease when he was only 11 years old, and that loss fractured everything. Behavioral problems followed, sending him back to Toronto to live with his grandmother, and by the time he turned 15, he was living on his own. Music became the escape. His first mixtape dropped in 2009 on YouTube, and within 5 years he had built enough buzz through projects like Lost Cause to land a deal with Mad Love Records and Interscope. The debut studio album I Told You arrived in 2016, followed by Memories Don't Die and Love Me Now in 2018. By 2021, his 80s-inspired album Alone at Prom had earned him his best critical reception ever, and that record still stands as the creative high point of his catalog. But here's where the story takes a permanent turn. On July 12, 2020, Tory Lanez attended a party at Kylie Jenner's Hollywood Hills home alongside Megan Thee Stallion. What happened afterward became one of the most talked-about criminal cases in hip-hop history. According to prosecutors, an argument broke out in a vehicle after the party, and when Megan tried to exit the SUV, Lanez allegedly yelled, "Dance, bitch," and fired a gun at her feet. 2 bullets struck Megan, and she later required surgery to remove the fragments. Charges came in 2020, and the trial played out in December of 2022. A jury convicted Lanez on all 3 felony counts, which included assault with a semi-automatic firearm, possession of a loaded, unregistered firearm in a vehicle, and discharging a firearm with gross negligence. Sentencing followed on August 8, 2023, when Judge David Hereford handed down a 10-year prison term. Lanez addressed the courtroom before the sentence dropped, saying he still considered Megan a friend. Megan did not appear for the sentencing, but prosecutor Edward Wellborn told the court that she would be affected by what happened for the rest of her life. Lanez has maintained his innocence from the very beginning, and that hasn't changed even now. He ended up at the California Correctional Institution in Tehachapi, a maximum security facility in Kern County. Despite being locked up, he kept working on music, releasing an album called Peterson in March of 2025 and announcing another project called Slutty Bass just 3 days before everything changed. On May 9, 2025, he posted a prison photo with other inmates promoting the upcoming album, describing the sound as a blend of Alone at Prom, Miami bass, and what he called slutty dark R&B vibes. 3 days later, on the morning of May 12, 2025, at approximately 7:20 a.m., Tory Lanez was attacked inside a housing unit at CCI Tehachapi. The attacker was a 41-year-old inmate named Santino Casio, who used a makeshift prison shank to stab Lanez repeatedly near a stairwell. Surveillance footage later obtained by the Shade Room and published on May 28th showed Lanez trying to escape while screaming for help as Casio struck him again and again. The injuries were devastating. A statement posted to Lanez's Instagram confirmed 14 stab wounds, broken down as 7 to the back, 4 to the torso, 2 to the back of the head, and 1 to the left side of his face. Both of his lungs collapsed from the trauma, and he was placed on a breathing apparatus before eventually being able to breathe on his own. Staff at the prison activated 911 and administered first aid before transporting him by ambulance to a hospital in Bakersfield, and the severity of his condition later required an airlift to Kern Medical Hospital. Now here's where the attacker's background becomes critical to the lawsuit. Santino Casio had been housed at CCI Tehachapi since 2004, when a Los Angeles County court sentenced him to life with the possibility of parole for second-degree murder, first-degree attempted murder, personal use of a deadly weapon, and inflicting great bodily injury. His violence didn't stop once he entered the system. In 2008, Cascio picked up an additional 6-year sentence for assaulting another inmate with a deadly weapon likely to cause serious injury. A decade after that, in 2018, he received another 2 years for possession and manufacture of a weapon while incarcerated. The CDCR described him as bald and heavily tattooed, and prison officials classified him as a high-risk inmate with a documented history of aggression. And that's the foundation of Lanez's legal argument, that the prison put a known violent offender right next to a celebrity inmate who is already a target by nature of his fame. When Cascio spoke to TMZ on May 24, 2025, his explanation only added another layer. He claimed he had heard through the prison grapevine that Lanez had put a bounty on his head. According to Cascio, the two had a decent relationship before the attack, but after hearing that rumor, paranoia set in. He told TMZ that when he ran into Lanez on the morning of May 12th, he noticed a suspicious lump in the rapper's pocket area and believed it was a weapon. Cascio said he attacked in what he described as self-defense. Lanez's team has flatly denied that any bounty ever existed. What happened after the stabbing moved fast. The Kern County District Attorney's Office and CCI's Investigative Services Unit launched a joint investigation, and Cascio was placed in restricted housing. Music industry figure Wack 100 later alleged in a Vlad TV interview that Lanez had been in protective custody at the time of the attack, not general population, which if true, raises even more questions about how the assault was able to happen. 10 days after the stabbing, on May 22, 2025, Lanez was transferred out of CCI entirely. His father, Sanstar Peterson, confirmed the move during an appearance on News Nation's Cuomo, hosted by Chris Cuomo. The new facility was California Men's Colony near San Luis Obispo, roughly 3 hours from Tehachapi. Lanez's attorney, Crystal Morgan, told TMZ he was doing fine considering the severity of his injuries, but was not happy about having to leave, since he had built a personal community at the previous facility. His father shared one detail that stuck, saying correctional officers at the hospital told him directly that when they heard on the intercom someone needed transport and learned it was Lanez, one officer looked at him and asked, "Why him, of all people?" That brings us to the lawsuit filed today. According to documents obtained by TMZ and published on April 17, 2026, Tory Lanez is suing the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, the warden of CCI Tehachapi named Danny Samuel, and 50 corrections officers at the facility. The total amount he's seeking is $100 million in damages. The lawsuit lays out several claims. First, Lanez alleges that Warden Danny Samuel violated CDCR protocols by housing him with or near Cascio, arguing that an inmate with Cascio's documented violent history should never have been placed anywhere close to a celebrity prisoner who is an inherent target. Second, he claims prison staff were absent during the stabbing and that the reason for the delayed response has never been explained. Third, the lawsuit accuses the prison of showing what it calls deliberate indifference to foreseeable violence. And fourth, Lanez argues that guards simply failed to protect him. The damages break down in a specific way. Lanez is seeking $1 million for each stab wound and $10 million for permanent facial scarring. One detail worth noting is that the lawsuit claims he was stabbed 16 times, while every source from May 2025, including his own team's Instagram statement, consistently reported 14 wounds. The lawsuit may include wounds that weren't previously disclosed or that medical records categorized differently, but the discrepancy exists and hasn't been addressed publicly. And then there's the part of the lawsuit that nobody expected. Lanez claims that while he was recovering in the hospital after the attack, prison officials seized his original songbooks containing unpublished lyrics, along with notes between him and his attorney. He argues those lyrics carry substantial commercial value, and the seizure of attorney-client materials raises a separate set of legal questions entirely. The lawsuit demands the return of all seized songbooks in addition to the monetary damages. This is an unusual angle for a prison conditions lawsuit, and it could end up being the part that attracts the most legal scrutiny. The CDCR has not responded to the lawsuit as of the time TMZ published the story. Now, this lawsuit doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's a whole web of legal battles surrounding Lanez that have been playing out simultaneously. On the criminal conviction side, the California 2nd District Court of Appeal denied Lanez's appeal in November 2025, finding no ineffective assistance of counsel or prejudicial trial court error. A rehearing petition was denied on December 5, 2025, but Lanez's legal team announced plans for a new appeal to the California Supreme Court, this time alleging a Brady violation. The Brady Rule, established back in 1963, requires prosecutors to turn over material that could be favorable to the defense. Lanez's attorney, Crystal Morgan, claims a pathology report from Cedars-Sinai, dated July 14, 2020, was never provided during the criminal trial, and that document allegedly references an evidence bag containing a foreign body picked up by a security employee. NBC News reported seeing the document, though it doesn't list Megan's name or specify what the foreign body is. Lanez spoke to NBC News from prison in December 2025, his first broadcast interview from behind bars. He said he believes he was wrongfully convicted and that the amount of new evidence emerging since the trial has been overwhelming, but he also made a point of saying he doesn't want his advocacy to come across as an attack on Megan. Political figures have entered the conversation too. Florida Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna publicly called on California Governor Gavin Newsom to review the case and issue a pardon, posting on X on May 19, 2025, that the 10-year sentence was based on what she called flawed evidence, political pressure, and prosecutorial bias. Luna cited forensic issues, including the fact that DNA analysis showed only a 0.01% chance that genetic material on the weapon belonged to Lanez, 0% on the magazine, no fingerprints matched to him, and DNA from 4 different individuals was found on the gun. She also noted that gunshot residue tests were never performed on other people present. Megan Thee Stallion's legal team pushed back hard. Her attorney Alex Spiro told The Hollywood Reporter that Lanez was tried and convicted by a jury of his peers, and that the case was properly adjudicated through the court system. Megan herself responded on TikTok on May 19th, expressing frustration at being forced to relive the shooting over and over. The defamation case adds another thread. Megan sued YouTuber Milagro Cooper, whose platform name is Milagro Grams, accusing her of cyberstalking, emotional distress, and promoting deepfake pornographic content. Megan alleged Cooper was paid by Lanez to spread lies and undermine her credibility. A federal judge denied Cooper's motion to dismiss in February 2025. During the deposition process, Lanez was fined between $20,000 and $25,000 for contempt of court after he was described as disruptive, allegedly pretending not to understand basic words like discuss and approve, and making comments about an opposing lawyer's appearance. His own attorney did not oppose the contempt motion. A restraining order was also granted to Megan in January of 2025, extending protection for 5 years. So where does all of this leave things right now? Tory Lanez sits in California men's colony, recovering from injuries that nearly killed him, with permanent scars on his face and a $100 million lawsuit pending against the state correction system. His legal team is pushing a Brady violation appeal toward the California Supreme Court, and oral arguments are expected after a panel consolidated his direct appeal, habeas petition, and successive habeas filing. Whether Governor Newsom will act on pardon or clemency requests remains entirely unknown. The CDCR hasn't commented on the lawsuit, and the Kern County DA's investigation into the stabbing could result in additional charges against Santino Casio, who is already serving life. The seized songbooks sit somewhere in the system, unpublished lyrics from an artist whose net worth was estimated at around $2 million as of December 2024 by Celebrity Net Worth, which means those unreleased songs could represent a real portion of his remaining financial value. And Megan Thee Stallion continues to deal with the fallout of a night in July 2020 that has generated years of legal proceedings, public debate, conspiracy theories, and political involvement, all while the man convicted of shooting her argues from behind bars that the system failed him too. $100 million. 16 stab wounds, or 14, depending on which filing you read, a warden accused of negligence, 50 officers named as defendants, Songbooks seized from a hospital bedside, attorney-client notes taken by the same system that was supposed to keep him safe. That's what this lawsuit is about, and no matter where you stand on Tory Lanez, the questions it raises about prison safety, celebrity incarceration, and institutional accountability aren't going away anytime soon.